Hi, I'm Gayle Lantz, founder of Work Matters, and I'm excited to be with you here today to talk about leadership. Whether you're heading up a nonprofit or you're a small business owner or perhaps you're an executive at a large corporation, I know that you're focused on two big goals. One is to increase your funding and two, increase your visibility. So if you're part of a nonprofit, it's increasing your funding that's so important because that's how you advance your mission. In fact, I spent most of my corporate career at TIAA-CREF, a very large not-for-profit organization that serves people in education and research. And then the latter part of my career I've spent as a solo consultant and coach, working with a lot of different kinds of businesses in all kinds of areas to help them be more effective in how they accomplish their goals. So it's important to look at leadership as the foundation for helping you achieve what's most important to you in whatever kind of organization you're running. So we'll talk about three specific areas today that will help you gain more clarity and confidence as you advance your mission. And I call that leveling up, but let's look at three specific areas that will be most helpful to focus on today. The first area is building your leadership mindset. And looking at your mindset is something that's often neglected. It's easy to get focused on to-dos and what you need to achieve. And so many times you lose sight of what's going on in your mind and how can you create the best kind of mindset to accomplish your goals. So we'll talk about that. We'll also focus on how to leverage your strengths, and that's an area that can be a blind spot for a lot of people. If you're listening to me, you might think, well, how do I know what my strengths are? It's not easy to determine that, especially if you've been in your role for a while. You may have lost sight about what some of your core strengths are. So we'll talk about ways that you can identify those and leverage them. And then finally, what you can do to expand possibilities for your organization. The higher level of thinking that you do in your organization, the better you are to achieve results. So we'll talk about some specific techniques to help broaden those possibilities so that you can think bigger and accomplish something that's even more exciting. So before we get started, I want to talk about leveling up and what that means, why it really matters. I mentioned earlier that it's easy to get bogged down in the to-dos, and if you're a leader, it's likely that you go through the week just trying to manage your to-do list and checking things off and trying to feel like you have a sense of accomplishment. I know that with a lot of the organizations I've worked with, some of their leaders complain that they feel like they're dragging this wagon to work and they're having to pull their team forward, or they actually have to run behind it and push the wagon to get things done. So what I'm asking you to do is consider a different analogy, as though you're getting into a helicopter. And when you step into a helicopter, things can seem a little unsettling. You've got the blades spinning, you've got dust kicking up. But once you can really lift up and get to a higher level view, you start seeing things that you haven't noticed before. And you start approaching your work and your leadership and how you're motivating others, how you're pulling people forward in a different way. So leveling up is simply a new way of thinking about how you're leading so that you can become more aware of your thinking and how you're feeling that can have the biggest impact on your business as opposed to what you're just doing all the time. All right, so there are three areas to keep top of mind when you're thinking about trying to make sure that your mindset's in the right place. And you can think of these as the three O words: optimism, outcomes, and opportunities. So how can you stay optimistic, even with all of the negativity out there and all the stress and the pressure that you face? One of the things that you can do early is to catch your thoughts. So when you first start thinking that something is going to be a problem, or you first start stressing about something, to catch your thoughts, to really pay attention to what your mind is saying to you so that you can begin countering those thoughts. As an example, I worked with an executive director of a nonprofit who was excited about being able to deliver a talk in front of a large business audience because the nonprofit was being recognized for the extraordinary work that they were doing. But she was nervous. She thought, I'm excited about doing this, but I don't know that I can complete a sentence when I'm standing up in front of people. I don't know that I'm going to make the best impression, that I'm going to represent our organization in the best way. All this nervousness started coming up. And once we worked together and I said, just be yourself and know what are some of the thoughts that you could think that would give you more power. She began thinking, I'm going to do the best that I can today. I know that I'm on a learning curve. I know that I'm doing the best I can for now. This doesn't have to be perfect. So just replacing those negative thoughts with something that's more empowering sounds like a very simple thing to do. But it's something that is really off the radar for a lot of leaders. They allow themselves to go negative. So catch that thinking early and deliberately put in place some other phrases, some other ideas that can help empower you to be more positive. All right, so let's focus on outcomes, because outcome thinking is another way to help you kind of level up, get to a different perspective in how you're approaching your problems. Too many leaders and employees get focused on your to-do list, activities, tactics. So as a leader, ask questions like, what is it that we're really trying to achieve by the end of this week or end of this quarter? Focus on what the results are that you're trying to get people oriented around so that they can figure out different means to achieve that. Don't get so caught up in trying to have everything figured out and tracing the steps for them or developing the path for them. Set the outcome at the start in your conversations with them and allow them to come up with the ways to achieve that. The more outcome focused you can be, the more effective you'll be in helping people really stay focused on results as well. So stop all the activity focus and focus more on outcomes. All right, so now opportunities. That's the third O word. And here the key is turning problems into opportunities. Problems happen all the time, so it's not unusual to get sucked into a problem that can really drain you, or to get your team rallied around something that's not working. It's a real skill and a real mindset shift to shift the problem that you're looking at into an opportunity. For example, I worked with an organization in a specific department in marketing that was struggling because they really felt devalued. They felt like they were becoming order takers, just doing what everyone else in the organization thought that they should do. They weren't really being able to be proactive. So we spent some time, instead of dwelling on the problem and worrying about how they were perceived, spending some time asking them what they thought was most valuable, how they could value themselves and see their worth differently. They were so concerned about what everyone else thought, but the real issue was that they weren't seeing themselves in the light that they should. So we spent some conversation, had some meetings where they were actually able to become much more proactive. That was the real opportunity. Instead of dwelling on what wasn't working and ruminating on all the issues that they were experiencing, they shifted their energy and they were able to move in a much better direction. They actually planned this event that was extremely successful because they had organized themselves differently, becoming the solution provider, bringing ideas forward instead of just being in the wait and see mode that they had been in the habit of being in all these years. So now let's talk about understanding your strengths and how you might leverage them. This is one of my favorite subjects because the way in which you can do that can help you gain insight not just about your own personal leadership strengths, but about the strengths that your team has and even your organization as a whole. So focusing on strengths is really a much better way to accomplish your goals as opposed to trying to shore up weaknesses. Not that working on something that you need to develop isn't a good thing to do, but orienting around your strengths is such a more powerful way to accomplish the results that are most important to you. So let's take a closer look at ways in which you can identify your own strengths. All right, one of the best ways that you can identify your strengths is taking some kind of assessment. And if you're in a leadership role, it's likely that you've already had an opportunity perhaps to take some kind of online assessment that gives you some insight about your personality or your behavioral style. There are all kinds of tools out there in the marketplace that you can explore. Assessments like Myers-Briggs or DISC or Strength Finders. In my work, I use a tool called Trimetrics that looks at behavioral styles, motivational factors, specific skills. It gives you a list of where you're strong in certain leadership skill areas versus some that you might want to work on. So being able to see an assessment gives you a more objective picture of what you do well. It can help validate something that you're thinking might be a strength, or it might also give you a new insight that you haven't even considered before. So assessments can be really powerful to help you gain knowledge about yourself, and then when you're working with a team as a whole, you can combine those results and really figure out how to leverage the different people on your team in a much better way. So another way to get feedback is to just seek informal feedback in your network. When I transitioned from my corporate role to start my own business years ago, I had coffee or lunch with friends or people that I trusted, and I would say, what are some of the key things that you think that I do really well? Or what are some of the strengths that you see in me? Or what are the first 3 words that come to mind when you think of me? I was really at a place where I was trying to figure that out. And it wasn't coming from a place of trying to boost my ego. I really had kind of lost sight about what it is that I did well. And it was important for me to become grounded in that when I was trying to get to the next level in my career and my leadership role. So you can simply reach out to people in your network that you trust and say, I'm just trying to ask for some feedback, some ideas, some perspective to help me see myself more clearly so that I can be most effective in what I'm trying to do. People are very responsive to that if you just ask. And one of my favorite ways to help identify your strengths is to look for stories and patterns based on your past experience. So if I were working with you one-on-one, I might ask you a question like this. I would say, so tell me about an experience that you had when you were at your best, something that you were really proud of, a moment that stands out, that shows that you accomplished something that had the impact that you really want, or when you were in the flow. What comes to mind? So if you're thinking now, it's probably bubbling up an idea that makes you feel good, I would hope. And when you think about that experience, if we were to have more conversations, we would be talking about what are some of the elements in those stories that then become clues about what it is that you do really well. The more stories that you can come up with that reflect the highlights, the best moments of your past, the more those will be great indicators to let you know what the patterns are that you can leverage going forward. So you can do this exercise not just with yourself, maybe one-on-one with someone that you trust, but you could do this exercise with your team too. Gather your team and say, I just want to reflect on some of the things that we've done really well, let's say over the past year or 2 years, so that we can really understand how we've worked together at our best. You know, it's interesting that most organizations focus on the root cause of problems, right? They want to fix things. What I'm asking you to do is focus on the root cause of success. It's a radically different viewpoint, and it will help propel you farther faster if you can really hone in on what you do well, own that, and determine ways that you can leverage that. So now we're going to talk about expanding possibilities. Again, as you're leveling up, getting to a higher level of clarity and confidence about how you're thinking about things, inevitably you're going to have a chance to expand possibilities. It's like you're in that helicopter and you're looking above the trees, so that what you're seeing now is a totally different view. You see the lake over there that you may have missed, or another mountain over there that's something exciting for you to focus on. So let's talk about ways in which you can expand possibilities. Here are some key methods for helping you think bigger in your business. One is to brainstorm ideas. Now, there are all kinds of ways that you can brainstorm ideas, but the main thing to do is to not judge them. It's very easy to have this quick idea, this possibility that you've thought of, and then come up with all the reasons why it won't work. So one of the best techniques to keep in mind when you're brainstorming is to take the judgment out of it. Let the team that you're working with, let the ideas fly. Have no judgment, just see what sticks on the wall. But brainstorm ideas can help you think more creatively and expand the possibilities that you have in your organization. Two is to engage more stakeholders. You know, in your role, it's very easy to think that you've got to figure everything out. Either go in your corner and then come back out and share what you've learned, or go up to the mountaintop and come back and share with your team or your staff what you want them to know. No, engage people. Engage a diversity of stakeholders. If you're in a nonprofit, one of the best things that you can do is to not just engage your staff or your team, but to engage donors, engage the people that you serve. Have some dialogue around what some possibilities could be for your organization. It really enriches the whole conversation by engaging all these different kinds of stakeholders and goes beyond the traditional thinking, which can really be quite narrow when you're thinking about where do we want to go next. Another option is to create a possibilities map, and this is a visual depiction so that you can put one possibility in the center. It's like you're drawing a circle and then thinking, what would 2 or 3 other ideas be if we did this? What else could we do? And then you build that out and you draw the other little bubbles so that you say, okay, well, if we could go to option B here, what would then be possible? And then you have your team or the group that you're dialoguing with keep expanding those possibilities. I love using mind mapping software as a tool, so you might want to consider doing that if you're a little bit on the techie side, or if you want to find a tool that can really help you see possibilities from a different view. And then finally, mastermind with big thinkers. Where are they? So one of the best ways to find these big thinkers is in your own peer network. Now, I'm sure you wouldn't even be listening to me or watching me if you weren't motivated and you wanted to learn something, or you wanted to improve in some way or increase your effectiveness. And the reality is that if you can find other people who are also wired like you and start some kind of little mastermind group or a study group or it could be online conversations, it could be in person if you find others in your local area, but to stay connected to other people who also are very highly motivated, who want to think bigger, think differently. The more you can associate with those kinds of thinkers, the more that will become ingrained in how you're going about your leadership role. So actively seek them out, look for them. They're out there. They're usually the most visible. They're the ones that are out there speaking. They're the ones that are writing articles. You'll see them in the news more. So make it a point to try to associate with those folks. The higher level of thinking that you do, the more likely it is that you can start wobbling. It's easy to be accused of being too idealistic, or who am I to be thinking of these kinds of ideas, or our organization can only move from here to here, when really you know they can go much farther. It's easy to start doubting yourself when all those thoughts start creeping in. I wanted to just remind you that's part of the process. Like when you start wobbling, no, that's okay, and not to think, oh, now I'm sliding downwards and I'm not going to be able to get back to that same level high thinking that I was doing. So catch your thoughts early, reset your thoughts. Much like the other optimism point that I was making about catching those negative thoughts, know that that's an opportunity to reset your thoughts and then rally your support, knowing that you can't do this all by yourself. Turn to your trusted advisors, colleagues, family, friends that you trust, but understand that wobbling is just part of the process. No one's perfect, and in fact, you can learn the most when you feel like you're off your game or off path. So turn those into learning opportunities, and don't be brought down by those. Really lean into those so that you can be stronger and get back to that higher level of thinking that you're so good at doing. All right, so when you do wobble, I wanted to just suggest this question. It's a wonderful question to return to in almost any situation in which you're extremely stressed or you're facing some difficult problem. And the question is, what's most important? What's most important? It's a reorienting question that helps you think bigger, helps you gain the perspective. A lot of times when I'm coaching a client and they're really brought down by an issue, weighting them down, I'll say, well, what will this matter a year from now? What's most important? Where do you want to be a year from now? What will this really matter? And they'll come to answers that really help them see that what they're worrying about is probably not that significant in the big picture. So keep reorienting yourself around what's most important. Ask that of yourself and of your team. All right, so we've talked about elevating your thinking and gaining a new view. I know that you probably recognize these 3D glasses. When you put them on, it feels kind of weird, but you're able to see things through a whole other lens, and that's what you can do when you decide that that's what you want to do. This has to be a deliberate decision on your part. It doesn't just happen overnight because it's too easy to get sucked down in the weeds or like I said, just trying to manage your to-do list day to day. Okay, so elevate your thinking, gain a new view. That's what you need to do to make sure that you're staying at that higher level thinking to help you be most effective. All right, so today we've covered how to build your leadership mindset, staying in that place of optimism, looking for outcomes, focusing on opportunities. We've talked about ways to leverage your strengths, lots of ways to do that. Own your strengths so that you can come from a more powerful place, not looking at what problems are. And then expanding possibilities, getting that higher level view so that you might see some possibilities that you could have been missing before just because you weren't thinking in the right way. So you might be wondering what's next. And so far we've covered the importance of your mindset. It's so important to pay attention to how you're thinking and how you're feeling, to make sure that you're kind of in this higher level space before you move into action. This is actually part of a leadership model that I developed called Lift Up, Move Forward. So we focused on the lift up piece a little bit, or what I'm calling leveling up, which is a component of that. And so I'd like to, as a bonus, include a few questions for you to think about to help you move forward so that you can take those next steps. All right, so the lift up is what I would consider the mindset fuel. If you get back in that helicopter, that's what you need to get to that perspective that you need to have. We've focused specifically on the leveling up piece of that. You might also want to consider things to let go of. That's another important tip. When you go higher level in your thinking, you have to let go of those beliefs, people's ideas that pull you down. And then lightening up, that's another piece, to just make sure that your mood is in the right place, that you're around positive people, that you're feeling good energy, that you're excited about what you're trying to accomplish. So for now though, I'd like to focus on the move forward path so that you can have some questions to keep top of mind to help you actually achieve the actions. Everyone likes to think that they're accomplishing something, and now that you know to think first and feel better first, I want to share a few questions to help you really move forward most effectively. So now we're going to cover a few key questions to keep top of mind as you move forward. The where, the why, the what, and the how. So where are we going? That's a vision question, and that's so important for you to let your team know, let the organization know, not just in the form of a vision statement. Too many times you can get tripped up trying to perfect this beautiful vision statement. You really need to be keeping that vision alive, talking about where are we going, what does that destination look like. So if you're traveling from wherever you are to, let's say, California, you're not just going to say where you're going, you're going to describe, we're going to go to the beach, this is what we're going to be doing, this is what the weather should be like, these are the people that we're going to see. So in your organization, this is who we'll be serving, this is how we'll be serving them, this is the feedback that we think that we'll be getting. It's really letting yourself fast forward as though you're playing a movie scene and describing what's happening. It gives a much richer picture so that your team can get on board and really feel like it's happening already. So that's an important technique. And then the why. Where are we going and why? Sometimes people completely lose sight of that. And even though you know what the purpose is, they may not. So keep reminding them, we're going here, and this is important because it's helping position us for further growth opportunity, or we have a big donation that we're able to attract by doing this, or we're going to be serving a different kind of population that's really important to us now. Whatever your why is, only you know what that is, but articulating that from a leadership perspective will be critical. All right, so what are we trying to accomplish? That's another important question. Instead of looking at the to-dos and the tactics and trying to figure out what to tell your team to do, ask, what are we trying to accomplish? Keep them outcome focused like we talked about, and that will help carry them down the road faster. And then finally, how will we do it? The what we're trying to accomplish is a strategic question. How we will do it is a tactical question. And that's something that is natural for people to focus on. In my work with organizations, it's one of the biggest challenges that I face is trying to help people not go to the how part too early. When you start figuring out, how do I do this? How do I do that? Sometimes you might even be missing the, well, what are we really trying to accomplish part? So it's important that you try to sequence this in a way so that the what question is clear and then the how will follow. So we've covered a lot of ground today in a relatively short period of time. And I know it's given you a lot to think about. And one of the best ways to really keep your thinking at that level is to get off site, to get out of your norm. And so I've created a special report that can help you be most effective in how you're organizing your strategy retreat or your corporate retreat. I call it developing insights about your offsites. So it'll walk you through ideas to consider before you plan the event, when you're there, what to do with your team. Really great content to help you feel more comfortable and confident when you're trying to take advantage of that time and energy away from your office. So simply visit workmatters.com/ewomen and you'll see the special report. There's a picture of it here on the screen that you can download at no cost. So if I can serve you in any way beyond what I've been able to share with you today, feel free to reach out and contact me at workmatters.com and let me know what your issues are and how I can be of service to you. In the meantime, I wish you all the best as you lift up and move forward to accomplish your mission.